Welcome back to the Herbalist Hour. Today, I'm really excited to have on Lauren Haynes, who's the owner of a wonderful brand. It's called Wooden Spoon Herbs. Welcome to the show, Lauren.
Thanks, Mason. I'm so happy to be here.
Welcome to the Herbalist Hour. This is where community gather, merging the power of people and the flowers, the sweet and the bitter to the salty, the sour. Umami, it's time for the Herbalist Hour.
I'm really excited to get to know you more. We've had some of your products over the years. That herbal coffee is pretty fire, I'll say that much. But stoked to kind of get more into the various products y'all offer, but also just kind of your background and everything. So let's kick things off how we usually do. What was a young Lauren like?
I love this question. I love that you ask it. A young me, tiny me, I was a really happy, silly kid. I had a really nice childhood in Tennessee. I'm from Chattanooga. Spent a lot of time outside. I was always reading, like nose in a book or like scribbling on paper. I love to read and explore and imagine, and I love to write. I was a big writer from a very young age, like filling up notebooks. And I was also very fascinated with nature from a young age and loved to study it. And I think that was like partially like hands-on and being outside, but I also really loved like reading magazines about like animal advocacy or like zoo books were huge for me, like really just like hanging on to every word and trying to like piece together how the natural world works. And from a young age I was also very interested in care professions and like healing, and was like dead set from age 5 on being a veterinarian, knew what school I wanted to go to, wanted to go there because it's more holistic. Like it always just all made sense to me. I remember being really young and asking my mom, like, Mom, I was reading and it seems like organic milk. I mean, this was in what, 1995. I was like, Mom, like
Wow.
organic milk is the way. Like we have to go organic, and like here's all the reasons. And
Yeah.
she like laughed at me and she was like, Sweetie, when you grow up and you can afford organic milk, you do that. And so I
Oh
think it
yeah,
was like always like my passion from a really young age. So I think then moving more into like my teen years, it kind of crystallized, and I was like in a lot of subcultural spaces and like going to basement shows and like playing music and into all of these kind of yeah, like subversive spaces, which opened me up to a lot of the things that led me to herbalism.
sure.
Yeah.
Did you say you were in a band or you played music?
Briefly and
Oh,
badly.
oh, okay. That's fair. Yeah, because Nashville has a huge music scene, obviously. How close is that to Chattanooga?
So Chattanooga is halfway in between Nashville and Atlanta. It's 2 hours south of Nashville and
Oh,
2 hours
wow.
of Atlanta. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's pretty.
Um, yeah, so what was that journey like to getting into herbalism, and like who were some of your mentors? What books were you reading? And yeah, tell us about that journey.
Sure. So I'll start with how I came to herbalism. I
Yeah.
was working in a really awesome, well-run bakery in Chattanooga called Need Loves, which was based on the business model of Zingerman's, which, if you're not familiar with Zingerman's, they do a lot of work around like how to run an anarchist business. Is really inspiring. And they're based at Zingerman's is in Ann Arbor. Um, and
Okay.
so I was working the booth at the farmer's market every week for the bakery. And that really opened me up to a whole world of like a totally different food production system. And I got to know all of those people and like got really immersed in that community. And through that, kind of started learning about fermentation and like wild food identification. I was going on a lot of plant walks. And then I got a job at a health food store, and one day I was on my break and I was wandering around and saw this like little section of herb farm tinctures. And I was like, oh,
Mm,
what are these cute little
that's
bottles?
cool.
So they were all simples, which if you don't know what a simple is, it just means a single herb tincture. So I wrote down a list of all of these plants, and there was so much overlap with the plants I'd been reading about as like edibles in your backyard. So there was chickweed, there was nettle, there was violet, right? And so I
Mm,
started looking up. I remember on my break, I was like on my phone looking up these plants one by one, and just really the light bulbs kept turning on and on and on as I realized the variety and the breadth of what the plant world offers medicinally. It's not just this one thing. It's like migraines or lymph movement, or it's just it really touches on everything. I think that was my huge awakening. And pretty soon after that, I went to my favorite local used bookstore in Chattanooga, and they were having a sale in the herb section. It was buy one, get one free. So now, like, moving to the question about books and mentors. And so it really was just like that kind of magical timing of like, okay, this is like speaking to me. This is for me. And so I kind of just cleaned out their section. It was a family run business, and one of the older sisters had been really into herbalism in her younger days. So she had been clearing out her collection. So I really inherited a collection from her name's Libby, and she's amazing. She lives in
Shout out
Chattanooga.
Libby.
Shout out Libby. Thank you for all those books. But it was, Susan Weed and Rosemary Gladstar and
Yeah,
Robin Rose Bennett, and then a lot of like classics from the 70s, like Jeannie Rose and 70s and Jeannie Rose. And yeah, really just the starter kit if you want to get into herbal.
totally.
Yeah, so I feel like I started from a really beautiful place of that kind of 70s renaissance of herbalism.
Was that Jeannie Rose book? Was it called Herbs and Things?
I
I
think that
remember I had one of her books, and I think that's what it was called. That was a wild book.
all of her books are wild. That's some
Yeah.
really beautiful recipes. I remember one
Totally.
recipe was for making beads out of rose petals, which I love.
Mm.
Such a beautiful.
Oh, wow. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
You were mentioning Herb Farm, the simples, those tinctures you saw in the health food store. Were there any herbs that were particularly calling out to you that you were just kind of became obsessed with right there in the beginning? And which ones were they?
They were the really simple weedy ones. I mean, I
Uh-huh.
like a pretty standard, temperate climate weedy mix in the yard. So it was mixed with like some beautiful natives, but violet, chickweed, cleavers, dandelion, that was really, really where I started and my first kind of loves of the herb world.
We'll get more into wooden spoon herbs later, but is there like, say, a flagship weedy herb that kind of is the poster child for your brand?
Oh gosh. Oh gosh. I mean, if I really, really, really had to pick one, it would be dandelion. Yeah.
Amen. That's kind of the flagship herb for Herb Rally as well, right there in the logo. So, um, really curious how growing up in Tennessee kind of affected your filter for the way you live your life, first of all, but also like through for your herbalism as well.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the culture in Tennessee is still really focused on the natural world. Chattanooga, the Tennessee River runs through it. It has
Oh,
it's where the Cumberland Plateau meets the Appalachian Mountains
wow.
and forms a valley. And so you can imagine how beautiful that is. So I think that as a baseline, I was really lucky to grow up around. My parents, raised us spending a lot of time camping and outside and hiking and really appreciating birds and trees and plants and so I think I was just immersed in it. And I think the culture is just still very focused on craft, right? So we went to
Yeah,
a lot of craft shows growing up. And like I think that was very formative to my psyche, just seeing like you can make things, like people make things. Things
right.
don't come from the store. They do, but also people make them and you can make all these different kinds of things and you can customize and put your personality into them. So that's such a part of who I am and also my brand.
Yeah.
Um, and then I think once I started learning about medicinal plants, that was another huge, beautiful revelation of like, oh, all of these like really famous plants in herbal medicine, right? So lady slipper orchid,
Mm.
golden seal, ginseng, bloodroot, like all of these plants are endemic to Appalachia. And like that is so special. I mean, there are whole medicine traditions, right? Like the eclectics were primarily using these plants. So I think that gave me such a deep and intimate connection to traditions of herbalism very immediately.
You mentioned going on plant walks. Were you going on plant walks when you were in Tennessee still? I know you're now in the Bay Area, but do you recall any of the folks that were giving those plant walks there?
Yeah, oh gosh. Holly Ritchie is
Oh,
the name of the first herbalist I ever went on a plant walk with. And so they were
awesome.
primarily in Tennessee. So Holly Ritchie, who is a fantastic psychotherapist and herbalist, she blends
Oh,
those two modalities really beautifully. She's very popular, very booked out in Chattanooga, but I highly recommend her. She was the first person to lead a plant walk at a natural area called Laurel Snow. And so that I had been reading, books and books and books. And so it was the first time I got to like put, a name to a face, so to speak, with the plants. Um, and then she also introduced me to the Southeastern Wise Women Conference, which I don't think happens anymore, but that was really formative for me. It was in Black Mountain, North Carolina. So I did that early on. And this is all happening 10, 11 years ago. That's kind of the
Okay.
time frame on all of these things. And then there's also an amazing organization in Tennessee called the Sequatchie Valley Institute, which is about an hour north of Chattanooga. And that's where actually Sandor Cats taught his first ever fermentation class, was at their yearly gathering for fermentation enthusiasts called Food for Life. And
Mm.
so the matriarch of the one of the families who started that was my conservation biology professor in college at the University of Tennessee, which is how I met her initially. And she takes all of her classes out to their closed loop homestead to illustrate the praxis of, that lifestyle and what conservation can look like. So lots of plant walks there to answer that, question.
That's fantastic. I actually just had Karina Wood on the show. She was the last episode we published, actually, and she was the founder of the Southeast Wise Women Herbal Conference for many years, along with Red Moon Herbs, I want to say as well. Just a quick break from the show to thank our presenting sponsor, Oshala Farm. Oshala Farm is a beautiful and vibrant certified organic herb farm based in Southern Oregon, where they grow and sell over 80 different plant species. The founders, Elise and Jeff Higley, have been longtime friends, so I highly trust their growing methods and ethics. You'll love the potency and vibrancy of all the herbs they have to offer. To learn more and purchase their herbs and other organic goods, head to oshalafarm.com. So thanks once again to Oshala Farm for sponsoring the Herbalist Hour. Now back to the show. Enjoy. So you mentioned Sandor Cats. I was actually going to ask you about that. I know he's based in Tennessee, not sure exactly which city, but so have you had a chance to actually study with him in person?
I've been to a class of his at Food for
Okay,
Life, which is a very small
awesome.
gathering at Sequatchie Valley Institute, many, many, many years ago. And I'm familiar with some of the like sister intentional communities around where he lives in Short Mountain and that whole community up there. There's actually a really amazing company called Short Mountain Cultures that does very beautiful ferments out of that community. And they have one, I just want to say this since I'm on an herbal podcast and you guys will appreciate it, but it's called the Rose, and it's rose
Say that
petals.
again. Sorry.
Oh no, sorry. It's a kombucha flavor called Triple Rose, and it's hawthorn berry, rose hips, and rose petals, and it's my favorite kombucha.
That's what's up. I got to try that. That sounds amazing. Yeah, Sandor Cats has been hugely influential in my life personally. We actually still to this day make a drink called Smreka. I'm not sure if you're aware of this or not. It's a Bosnian fermented drink made out of cedar berries. No, sorry, juniper berries. Basically, it's just juniper berries and water and thyme. And then it creates this wonderful, delicious drink. And I read that in what is it, The Art of Fermentation, maybe, by Sandor Cats. But I know, and we could fast forward a little bit, and then we'll go back to the early days of Wooden Spoon Herbs. But a lot of your, I want to say, products and just general philosophy seems to be revolving around gut health in general. Would you say that's true?
I would say it's true, and like the Hippocratic, what is the quote? It's escaped my brain, but the quote from Hippocrates that says all disease begins in the gut. There it is.
Ah, yeah,
I think
totally.
that perspective, and also to kind of touch on your point about mentors,
Yeah.
I went to the 3-year program that Phyllis Light offers in
Oh,
person
wow.
in North Central Alabama. So she's been my main mentor. And so her philosophy is very gut health first, food first, body, anatomy and physiology before you learn any herbs. So really it was part of my education, very, very formative to me. And that is my personal passion and like area of focus for the past couple of years. I was reading this morning about the different ways that breast milk inoculates babies, GI tracts with
Totally.
microbes. And, it's fascinating. And I also love gut health because it's so current. It's like one of the most cutting edge areas of research that's happening right now that kind of intersects with natural medicine. And also Paul Bergner is another huge mentor of mine. And he is, completely like nutrition focused, nutrition first. So both of those together have kind of shaped enhanced and supported my passion and paradigm with gut health being the main approach. Yeah.
I love that you've created this wonderful, successful brand and you're still like reading about, the updated science and you're still really into it. You could tell that you love this stuff.
I do.
Well, let's chat about the early days of Wooden Spoon Herbs. I don't know, when did it start, but also I want to know the imagery behind the wooden spoon. Why did you choose that to be your like your name and everything?
Yeah, I naming things is so hard. And I feel like
Yes.
it's like with anything, like with a pet or with a child, like the name comes to you. You don't get to choose the name. It
I
finds
like
you.
that. Yeah.
And I think I had like been, had some working names and we were like writing them down. And um I think something that was so important to me if I was going to put offerings out into the world, which was like on such a micro scale at the time, that it was really just like, how do I want people to feel? Like, what am I trying to communicate? And I think what I love about herbalism is that it's very scientific and it's very artistic at the same time. And so I think because of that, there's a lot of care that comes from the herb world or can come from like herbalism that we don't find oftentimes in more clinical settings of, healthcare. And I wanted people to feel, yeah, I feel like I'm just rambling.
You're
But
doing
it's
great.
right. You're in your kitchen, someone's
Yeah.
caring for you, they're making something for you. There's a hands-on, it's tangible, it's tactile. And also I think with the wooden spoon, it's such a great metaphor for herbalism because it's something, you can take a twig and you can form it into a spoon that's like highly
Mhm.
utilitarian. And that's the same thing we're doing with herbal medicine, right? We're taking something, we're working with something from the natural world to create this separate thing that now has another life and another purpose.
Absolutely. I didn't tell you I was going to ask you this, but I saw this on your Instagram account way back 68 weeks ago. You posted, the wellness industry has a luxury problem. It kind of, when you were talking right there, I kind of got called back to that quote, and I was wondering, even though it was 68 weeks ago, can you speak to that? The wellness industry has a luxury problem.
I would be happy to. And first of all, I just want to credit my marketing director, Chelsea Kern, for coming up with that. It's something that we talk about a lot when we, have like meetings and we're starting with, the values and mission of the company first. And I think that that's where it came from. But just to credit her for that quote.
Absolutely.
And it's true. It's been so fascinating and like such a privilege to be a part of um this industry while it has gone through such a boom. I think I started Wooden Spoon to answer your question 10 years ago. 2024 is our 10th year, which is
Wow.
yes, thank you.
That is wow. That's impressive.
I have a 10-year-old now. But when I started, I think the culture was so much around like the trend was about like superfoods and turmeric and juice bars,
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
like all
Goji
of
berries.
exactly. No, exactly. And like that's very cool. And I just want to say that I don't care how someone comes to herbalism, like all routes are valid. That's awesome, but for
Absolutely.
me, it was like, oh, okay, cool. So like why is an acai berry any better than a blueberry that like grows native or in Tennessee or like any blueberries grow all over? And the answer is it's not. So I think I just wanted to like bring the focus home to wherever you are, right? So bioregional herbalism was kind of my like main inspiration for starting Wooden Spoon, specifically in the Southern Appalachian bioregion. I am in the Bay Area now, but I've only been here for a few months. I mean, and I was in Tennessee until then.
Gotcha.
So I'm brand new here, and I'm like being very humbled by how many plants I don't know,
Right.
um, and how wrong all my guesses are. But uh,
Happens.
yeah, so anyway, going back to the wellness industry has a luxury problem. So I think we've seen this huge boom in wellness or, whatever you want to call it, complementary alternative healthcare, medicine, herbal medicine, uh, the commercialization of that. And I think like immediately when I started my business, there was this like huge trend towards making it this very elite, luxury, esoteric,
Yeah.
ethereal practice.
No.
And that's fun. Sure. That's fun, but it's like highly elitist and highly exclusionary. And I think from day one, it was really important to me, one, to keep my price point down. Two, we want to make beautiful things. We want them to appeal to everyone. So, and three, to keep true to my formulation and sourcing practices that I started with and kind of ethos that I started with. So, yeah, I think it's interesting to see. I think every year the industry shifts. And at this point, I'm pretty in my own lane and like focused and like put myself in a bubble so that it doesn't like get to me or distract me. But I think that
I
we've
like that.
become something where a lot of people are trying to cash in. There's like new brands every day. I saw an ad on TikTok for a capsule of mullein leaf, and they were talking about it about cleanse your lungs of like 20 years of smoking, or like I don't know, like mullein was the new wonder drug, which mullein is probably one of my favorite. Like I don't know, I have a weird connection with mullein. It's one of my
Yeah,
favorite dearest plants, and so for me, I was just like, no, 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 had a very visceral reaction of like that's not what we're doing here. So yes, it has a luxury problem, and I think that's I think just in terms of accessibility and you know maybe we're not even talking about price, maybe we're talking about it as something that um has become more of an aspirational lifestyle
mm,
thing. Not that wooden spoon is like immune from benefiting from that,
right.
you know,
Yeah,
just to be like fully transparent, it's all capitalistic. But
right.
yeah, I think that what's something that's important to the brand and the values is accessible price points, making sure we're using truly sustainable ingredients like weedy herbs that don't require a ton of inputs, that will just grow and grow and grow. Um, and really keeping it as grassroots as we can.
Absolutely love that. You mentioned you had a marketing director. I was curious, what does the Wooden Spoon Herbs team look like?
Yeah. Um, lovely.
Okay.
I work with 5 wonderful people. And we have all been together as a team for 2 years. So I'm very proud of that. And we've grown a very wonderful ecosystem of uh playful work. And we have someone, let's see, so we have a marketing director, and then we have someone who does marketing, content creation, and coordination. We have a um wholesale manager who manages that whole side of the business, which is quite robust and continues to grow. I have um, well, yeah. So Chelsea's our marketing director, just to name them. Madison is working on content creation. Sarah is our wholesale manager. We have Laura Lee, who is operational support and also customer service support. And then we have John, who is our fulfillment manager and gets all of your orders out.
Awesome. So you started 10 years ago, and I presume it was all you in the very beginning. Is that true?
It was mainly me until they all came on board. I had someone helping me get the orders out, and then
Yeah.
I had a dear friend, Lily, with me, kind of doing a hodgepodge of things for a couple of years. But in the beginning, yeah, I was doing it all for at least the first 5 or 6 years.
Wow. How did you know when it was time to hire someone, and how did you like cross that bridge? Because that could be incredibly challenging. You're like, well, now I have to pay this person. Can I really afford it? What was that process like?
Figuring out how to run a business has been a clumsy process. I think 10 years in, the learning curve is still 90 degrees, but in the early days, yeah, it was so confusing and
Yeah.
scary. So I think it was really my first hires were really just when I couldn't do it all in a day. And I was like, and um, I had someone at the time who was like, I really need a job. We live in a remote place. And I was like, oh, awesome. I need help. Let's just try this and see how it works. And, you can start slowly and bring people on for a few hours here and there and just see how it goes until you feel comfortable kind of spending that money to get the help that you need. Because, you know, it is one of those cliche things where it's like, the more help you have, the more, your business can grow.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it is scary in the beginning. And then I think that answers your question. I'm very
Yeah, no, that's great. We're kind of struggling with that same problem right now. Like, it would be nice to have help with this and that, but at the same time, I'm like, can we really afford someone? But I like the idea of, just hiring someone a few hours at a time and whatnot. Back when I used to work at Mountain Rose Herbs, people would always, think that we had this most cush job where it was like running through fields of lavender all day. I use that example all the time, but really there's a lot that happens behind the scene, just basic monotonous type work. And I'm just kind of curious, what are some other challenges of running herbal products companies such as Wooden Spoon Herbs?
I think the biggest challenge has been learning how to run a business.
Yeah.
I had no experience. I mean, I had a door-to-door dog treat sales business when I was
Wow.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I always wanted to do this, but really the learning curve is staggering. And I think starting an herbal products business genuinely is one of the hardest businesses you can start because of the regulations and because how expensive everything is when you really get to a point where you need or want to abide by all of the, FDA regulations and beyond.
Yeah.
To some accounts, some larger accounts have even more stringent than the FDA regulations. So that's kind of the hardest part. The finances is the hardest part. Learning that, I mean, that's not something anyone teaches you. And then learning how to manage people. And then, the list goes on and on. So, um, one of the hardest parts too is exactly what you just said is like, while I would love to be touching plants every day, I'm actually in, 20 sheet spreadsheets, like
Right. Right.
they're like working out formulas and stuff like that. So, and it's all, for the cause, but it's not necessarily always fun. It's fun a lot of the time, but yeah.
Absolutely. How do you handle, say, the FDA regulations, stuff like that? Are you constantly like learning? We have a friend, Asa Waldstein. He did an episode with us on the Herbalist Hour where he talks a lot about like making medicinal claims in your marketing material. How are you educating yourself on that so you could implement that in the marketing of Wooden Spoon Herbs?
I would just say my first one word answer is community. I think I
Mm,
built my community of like herbal peers. It's really just
yeah.
been word of mouth and meeting the next person. And so at this point we have someone, so when we're doing formulations, it's kind of a back and forth between my formulation partner, um, because I did formulate the entire line and then I got to a point where no new products were happening because I had zero time. So working with the formulation partner who I've known since day one of being an herbalist and who I trust has been key. And then kind of going back and forth with them and then our FDA compliance consultant who works on claim substantiation. So claim substantiation just means that you have a document of files that you submit to the FDA showing that the claims you're making, the structure function claims you're making are verifiable with clinical studies. And so we have consultants, I think is how it works. And it's kind of just a big conversation between a lot of people to get down to the bottom line and make sure we're covered all the way around, and then communicating that internally to our marketing department, and a lot of training internally with the staff, and making sure that we understand what we can and can't say.
Absolutely. And for the listener out there, I would recommend checking out asawaldstein.com. He comes out with a newsletter called Warning Letter Wednesday. And basically every Wednesday he puts out a newsletter where he lets people know who the FDA is busting. And they're always in like the natural products industry and why are they busting them and for what reason and how you can avoid that and everything. So it's super informative. Have you heard of that before?
I think that's such a brilliant idea. I feel like as
Yeah.
soon as you said warning letter, I couldn't breathe anymore. And
Yeah.
I mean, that is a really fun, that's not fun, but
Yeah.
like that's a really illuminating place to start is like reading
Yeah.
FDA warning letters because
Yeah.
they're not as scary as you might think that they are also. So yeah, that's
But
fascinating.
well, we can chat about some of the fun stuff. Let's talk a little bit about some of your products. Just perusing your website, I thought it was really cool that you have a magnesium product. When I think of like buying a magnesium product, I've always for years bought the Natural Calm or whatever, just because that's what I knew. But I guess let's talk a little bit about the benefits of magnesium, first of all, if you'd be willing to, and then also why you chose to create a magnesium product with your herbal line.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Thanks. I love magnesium. It's when I, see clients or when I'm talking to friends and family, people come to me like, "Hey, what do I do for this?" I typically always start with magnesium. It's such foundational nutrition that it can really resolve a number of concerns that people have. And I think oftentimes when, like as a clinical herbalist, but also, as a product formulator, I'm always thinking about like, okay, what are those things and how do we remedy like the top five, right? So stress, mood, sleep, gut health, and wild card hormones, right? So like
Mm,
those would be the top five things, especially as a brand that like is geared toward femmes, like largely our customer base is like femme people. Those are the top 5. And magnesium touches on all of those and more. And so I think that's, for me, I was just recommending, and usually Natural Calm, right? Because it has such great distribution. It's in every drugstore. It's like tasty. It's a good product. Was recommending it over and over and over because magnesium can help with stress and mood. Just to go over them again: sleep,
Please.
gut health, hormones, workout recovery, and everything else that stems from those that you're going to feel. It really is something that you have to be supplementing with. Like our, soil is depleted of minerals, and that leads to our foods being, Paul Bergner does a fantastic job of presenting studies where he shows vegetables grown in the 1960s and then vegetables grown in, the 1990s. And the mineral depletion and the vitamin depletion is 30% or higher across the board. It's studied, it's verified, and those were studies by the USDA. Who wouldn't want you to know that, right? In the first place. So magnesium is, I think, the most important mineral so it acts as a smooth muscle relaxer, which is how it helps with stress and mood, how it helps with menstrual pain, how it helps with GI movement, how it helps with muscle recovery post-workout. And it's also just a building block, and an enzyme acts as an enzyme for over 500 processes in the body. Magnesium I could talk about for an entire hour solid, but it really these things where it's like, okay, try this and see what resolves. And I remember I had a friend years ago come to me and she said, Lauren, I don't know what to do. I have crippling anxiety. And I just like, please help me. And I was like, okay, awesome. Like, what are you doing? What's going on? She's like, well, I'm drinking like 3 cups of coffee a day. And I was like, okay, great. Well, are you taking anything? And she was like, no, nothing. And I was like, perfect. We're going to cut that back to 1 cup of coffee a day. And we're going to supplement with magnesium. And a week later, she was like, you changed my life. You changed,
Wow.
it's like, yeah, like, and so that can kind of speak too to like the coffee thing and the magnesium thing, because I think the number 1 and 2 concern, of concerns of people in the Western world are, well, 3: stress, mood, and sleep, right? We're all stressed out, we're all grumpy, and we can't sleep. And those things are all just like a negative feedback loop. So, because I was recommending it over and over and over, I was like, it would make a lot of sense, instead of sending people to the drugstore for a product, if I could just like offer one that I felt really good about and that had like a really beautiful story behind it. So we added blue spirulina. It's blue lemonade flavor. We have like a really beautiful, it's really just a lemon extract, that we're using as a flavor. It's an organic lemon extract, so basically a powdered tincture of lemon. It's magnesium citrate that's sourced from seawater, which I'm really, really in love with that raw material, because not only is it the most natural form of magnesium that you can find, it's not synthetic. Because it's from seawater, it has a complement of all trace minerals, and in substantial amount, calcium, potassium, and iodine. So I really love this product. And it's our number 1 bestseller. Like the magnesium is really resonating. I think it's like, maybe trending on TikTok or whatever, but I don't think magnesium is a trend. I think it's something that people are just like really starting to understand and even hear from their doctor, which is fascinating to me. Like I talk to all kinds of people, in my business life, and even like, the most unsuspecting person will be like, oh yeah, I know magnesium. My doctor told me to take that. So it really also, I think, helps build trust and builds a link between that kind of conventional side of medicine and then the more like natural, nature-based medicine. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of magnesium, and I just felt like we had to have one. Like if this brand is to be a representation of my like practice and my ethos as a clinical herbalist, we had to have magnesium.
Yeah, I was gonna go back to your website here. I want to say it was like $25, something like that. Um, yeah, I was gonna say, because you probably don't need to consume that much of the powder per day. How long would one of your containers last a person?
Exactly. So it's $26. We're very close,
26 bucks.
or 30 cents. Yeah. So it's a month.
Okay, that is not a bad price to pay when you're consuming a mineral that 99% of people, I don't know the actual stat, are deficient in this. Am I correct? Like so many people are deficient in this mineral.
It's around 80%. I think what people
Wow.
also don't realize is that when you are, okay, so when you're doing the thing, so think of all the things that magnesium helps with, right? All the things I just mentioned: hormone health, HPA axis regulation, aka stress mood hormone support, workout recovery. So if you're experiencing chronic stress, and that can be from work, you're a parent, you live in a city, like all of these things that we just don't think about as being stress. If you're experiencing chronic stress, if you work out daily or even weekly, if you have hormone dysregulation, if you have GI problems, all of these things are going to be causing you to hyper excrete magnesium because your body's just using it, using it, and you can't replenish it more quickly enough. So, like in Paul Bergner's paradigm in his teachings, he says, okay, great. If you're working with someone clinically, then you need to give them, obviously not all at once of magnesium, but you need to like give them so-called, a loading dose, so to speak. With magnesium, we're not going to give it all at once because it can cause GI distress and too high of a dose. But
Disaster pants.
you're going to give, you're going to start higher at a higher baseline than you would with someone who like had adequate levels. And obviously we wouldn't know that unless we had them lab checked, unless you're experiencing these symptoms. But people are deficient and we're also hyper excreting because we live in a stressful culture.
Out of my own selfish curiosity, do you have like a subscribe, like monthly button where they could just auto ship?
Totally. Yeah. Most people,
Sweet.
we have a lot of people subscribe to the magnesium, set it and forget it. And then you get, I believe it's like 15% off and free shipping. So it's kind of a
Oh my
win.
gosh. Sign me up. All right, cool. I'm gonna do that. Well, let's move on to another product. We actually, I want to say we consumed this a few months ago. Your herbal coffee. That's Amanda's favorite. She absolutely loves your herbal coffee. So you want to talk a little bit about that, maybe like the reasoning behind the formula and whatnot?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Yeah.
I love herbal coffees. Like I didn't drink coffee. I didn't drink caffeine for probably 2 or 3 years, and then I didn't drink coffee for probably 5 years. Now I abuse caffeine, and coffee is my drug of choice currently. But but through that, I was trying a lot of different coffee alternatives, and Dandy Blend, I think is the best flavor profile on the market. I was like really into Dandy Blend, and so I was drinking Dandy Blend every day. And after about 2 weeks, I got really intense stomach pains. Just like my stomach felt very raw. So I was looking into Dandy Blend and looking at how it's processed, and it's pretty heavily processed. And it's also through that process, you're refining a lot of starch. So
Mm.
there's a lot of refined starch that's happening with, the number one coffee alternative on the market. And so, I was thinking, I was like, okay, great. Well, like, how do we make something that tastes just as good, but is less refined? So I think our herbal coffee, and not to knock Dandy Blend, they are should and will be around
Oh,
forever.
geez.
Oh, geez. But I mean,
Mm.
anyway.
Yeah.
So it's hurting my stomach. And so basically our product is an unrefined version of Dandy Blend. I think it tastes really similar. I've been told by a veteran of the industry that it's the best one they've ever tasted. Like I think really just taste, it comes down to taste. And then when we're talking about function with the herbal coffee, so coffee is great. Like true coffee is great because it's a bitter. It's a bitter in the morning. It, gets the liver going, gets the bile flowing for breakfast. And so I wanted to make something that supported the liver, that supported gut health, and that was really giving minerals and like adding to your nutrition versus just being a coffee replacement. So our herbal coffee is a traditional base formula of roasted dandelion root, burdock, and chicory. And then it also has cinnamon and mesquite and maca, which gives it like a really nice malty, roasty flavor and some added benefits of energy, because maca is such a gentle stimulant that you still feel as if you've had a cup of coffee without having to have the caffeine jitters.
Totally. Yeah, the mesquite piqued my interest. I don't think I've seen anyone do that before. That's a great idea. So it
Thanks.
adds like an extra like roasty flavor to it.
Yeah.
Amanda and I, we make coffee every day, but then we'll always throw in a couple scoops of roasted chicory root. So we kind of cut it. That's like the New Orleans style. At least I want to say that they do it there in New Orleans with the extra chicory. That way you're getting the additional, medicinal benefits of the chicory as well. But yeah, I highly recommend your herbal coffee. You can definitely check that out at woodenspoonherbs.com. Anything else you wanted to say about the roast or the herbal coffee?
Um, no, no. I mean, I think
No?
it's hard to convey how delicious something is, like
It's true.
without having someone taste it, but I really love it. So thanks for the endorsement.
Absolutely, give it a shot. I also wasn't going to originally ask you about this, but I'm kind of curious with the whole fire cider debacle. I'm not really sure when and your timeline, you were selling it, and if you had to like avoid that language at one point, but how good did it feel when you could start saying fire cider again?
Oh, good. No, we did fire cider from day one, and
Yeah.
always had to come up with an alternative name for it. And I think it was last year, maybe 2 years ago. I'm lost track of time, but it felt, yeah, it felt so good. I'm sure everyone can identify, and it was such a triumph to be able to go back to that name after, just like as on principle. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, you seem like the perfect person to ask this. Do you have any advice for the aspiring herbal entrepreneur, especially those out there that might be looking to start, like, say, an herbal products company and or something to that effect?
Oh gosh. Um, yeah, I think surround yourself with people who energize you and
Mm,
who you can ask questions and kind of, vent to each other and learn together. And like everybody can, everybody's going to learn something different and have something to share with you. Everybody has obviously a different lived experience. So I think really just like peer to peer, um, what am I looking for? Peer-to-peer like information sharing and
mm.
have a community that you can kind of like be in to support you because there are so many highs and lows and things to learn is my number one piece of advice. And then I think also my number two piece of advice would be find ways to stay inspired. That's just so
Mm.
important because there's a lot of stuff that isn't fun. So make sure you're always counterbalancing that with things that are beautiful and fun.
That's just great life advice, I would say as well. As far as like staying inspired, I have to imagine over the years, Wooden Spoon has had products that have stuck around, but then part of staying inspired is creating new products, or is it kind of is part of the inspiration and fun that you're having is just getting it to new markets, or how do you see that?
My fun is creating new products. That's what I love.
Okay.
If it were up to me, if I could just do that all day, that's what I would do is research and come up with new products. That's my favorite thing. So that is what keeps me inspired. And I think, yeah, I think a lot of it comes from reading herbals and like putting research with the herbals and like thinking about flavor profiles and thinking about like what's in people's kitchens. I think being in the kitchen is what really inspires me and thinking about people being in the kitchen and how they're going to consume herbs because, we started with tinctures, we started very traditionally, but also with like hot chocolate mixes with herbs in them. And so it's been really interesting to see what people resonate with and what sticks around. Like, for example, this time next year, we'll only have probably like 3 or 4 tinctures and we'll have like 5 or 6 beverage blends. And so that's kind of like as we reach more people, what they understand and like how they want to interface with herbalism. So um that is how I stay inspired is researching, being outside and creating new products. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Wooden Spoon Herbs also has really beautiful design and marketing. I mean, for real, check out the Instagram page, dear listener. I want to say that's at Wooden Spoon Herbs, correct?
That is,
Yeah,
yes.
some beautiful feed. Do you have any just general, say, marketing and or like branding advice?
Um I would just say don't be afraid to be as like experimental and like true to yourself as you can be and bring all of the inspiration like to the forefront. Like people want, I mean, I feel like this is what you hear a lot of like businessy people say, but people do want like to connect with the person behind who's making the things
Mm.
and everyone's so different and I think um yeah.
Are you saying like be yourself, kind
Just saying be yourself.
of?
I don't know. I don't know. I think it just goes back to like inspiration and like experimentation and like seeing what
Like
feels
that.
good to you and really just like having your own vision and not letting any of the noise kind of affect it. I think that's kind of the magic sauce is just like having your own vision. Like for Wooden Spoon, we've been through so many iterations and like I am not a proficient visual artist. So I've always worked
Mm.
and collaborated with other people to come up with the visual identities, but I mean, the inspiration is like where I started, what I was saying, like those books from the 70s about herbal medicine with like the ornate borders and like the hand-drawn
Mm,
illustrations of plants. And so I think that's kind of what always came through. Like that feeling is what I always wanted our brand
it
to
really does.
present like. And so
Yeah.
how do you do that with like a modern spin? That's kind of like where I'm coming from. And I think that people feel just the authenticity.
I love that you brought this up a couple times. You're essentially putting the blinders on, like you're not seeing what the quote unquote competition's doing or the other brands are doing because you just want to do what you do and do it the best you can, if I'm hearing that correctly.
I
Um,
yeah, it took me a while to get there,
for
to
sure.
yeah.
Yeah, just do your thing. Absolutely. I love that. I was going to ask you, how important have been events for you? Attending events, going to trade shows and or like herb conferences if you do those. Because I don't know if you know this, I was the events coordinator for Mountain Rose Herbs for 11 years, so that's kind of like what I did. But how important is that to the Wooden Spoon Herbs brand?
I think super important. And when I think about the events that we've done, um, they break down for different kind of into different goals. Like some of them are for brand awareness and some of them are for like my personal community building. Like herb conferences are for community building and for learning. And then like trade shows are great for building that peer network of other people who have started companies and have their own projects, which is so important. I just feel like that is really what's gotten me through the years is my community of peers. So I think, yeah, just meeting people and like hearing one thing I love to hear that I don't get to hear just like sitting behind my computer is like people's intersections in their lives with herbalism, right? Like everyone has one. And I think that's something that's so fascinating to me. Everyone has like a point of connection with herbal medicine, even if it's their like kooky aunt. So I just really love that. And it's just really fun and important, I think, to get out into the community whenever you can. Yeah.
Absolutely. And this is kind of the opposite of going to an herb conference, but has Wooden Spoon Herbs ever attended Expo West
I'm
in
about
Southern
for the
California?
first time.
Okay, wow, yeah. I've actually somehow never been to that event, but I think you're going to be blown away. I think there's like 110,000 people that attended or something like that. So I'll have to hear how it goes. I'll be very curious, but it should be really good for the brand reaching a ton of new people. So
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I'm excited to check it out.
um you also have this really cool hat. It's called Be Herb Now. I was highly influenced by Be Here Now, the book. I'm guessing that's where it came from. But definitely, I'll leave a link to those hats in the how have those been selling?
The hats were a hit. The hats were hits.
Really?
Yeah, we have just this baseball cap, and instead of be here now, it says be herb now, which is
Yeah.
it's I think it was one of the biggest joys getting to, run a business, which is so challenging that I got to put a really silly pun onto a hat that sold really well. That was a personal victory for
I
sure.
kind of feel like those would be popular at Expo West for whatever reason. Um, so what's the mission of Wooden Spoon Herbs, would you say?
I think the mission of Wooden Spoon Herbs is twofold. I really want everyone in the world to have an herbal practice that they feel really energized by and excited to keep around. I just want to connect more people with plants that will change not only like their physical or like physiological lives, but I think for me, one thing herbalism gave me was just a more open-minded sense of like what's possible and like what's around me at all times. So that kind of magic is definitely a mission of mine to expose as many people as I can to, or as many people who want that. And then the second part, I forgot what I was going to say. So we'll just keep.
That's great. Concise. Well, I do think we have time for this part, this segment. We talked about this beforehand that we might be able to go over this. You have a blog post. I really like it. Your blog is called The Digest, kind of another fun pun right there. But you somewhat recently came out with a blog post called Seven Juicy Herbs for Winter Hydration. I was just wondering if we could go into individual herbs if we've got the time or if you'd like to, but why is it so important to hydrate and consume these hydrating herbs during the winter time?
Well, first of all, I just really love gooey plants and plant goo.
Mm,
Like mucilage is like one of my favorite plant constituents. And so we actually publish this seasonally and we update it seasonally for the different uh seasons.
I like
So
it.
kind of like be shifting and tailoring their herbal routines seasonally, especially to where they live. So some people live in dry climates all the time, but winter air is just so drying. It's important to stay hydrated all the time. And so I also wanted people to understand that there's hydration beyond water, right? So we can talk about mucilaginous hydration, water-based hydration, oil hydration, like all of these things are really important for a plethora of reasons. But I think I would really encourage people to explore plants like hibiscus and cinnamon and marshmallow, leaf and root, and in the winter. And elderberry is really hydrating as well. People don't
Oh,
understand. So I think that those are really great herbs for the winter. And then, we also have like the summertime one that's like corn silk and okra and like all of these other plants that come in the summer and can help with the hot weather. But I think just dry air. And a lot of times when our mucous membranes get dry, it creates micro tears and permeability that allows pathogens to get in. So a lot of sickness can happen through just through dryness and through dehydration. Not to mention, like your immune system needs to be, our cells need to be really hydrated to function optimally. So just making sure that you're staying hydrated to create the best barriers you can for pathogen protection throughout the winter.
yeah, I'm from Oregon and moving out to here to Wisconsin for my first ever legit Wisconsin winter. I didn't realize how drying it really is. I'm having chapped lips for like the first time in my life. So yeah, marshmallow root is definitely my friend. We make a lot of nourishing herbal infusions with the marshmallow root. Does Wooden Spoon Herbs use Tilia or linden in any of the formulas that you have?
That's a good question. I know that we used to have a tea with linden, leaf and flower, but at the moment we don't have anything with Tilia. Mhm.
That's another favorite of mine. It's a delicious, and it's in the Malvaceae plant family, if I recall correctly, the marshmallow. So it's also got that like nice mucilage as well. But great suggestions. Yeah, hibiscus. I want to say hibiscus is in the marshmallow family too.
It is. It's a Malva.
Okay, yeah. Licorice root, aloe vera, oat straw. Oh, you consider oat straw as kind of like a maybe just because it's so nourishing, or would you consider it like partially
I think
hydrating as well?
I think it's definitely hydrating. I mean, it gets
Yeah.
pretty thick when you brew it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cucumber, and then you mentioned horsetail as well. So I'll leave a link, dear listener, to this blog post in the digest in the podcast show notes in the YouTube description, so you can check that out there. Awesome. Well, why don't we kind of wrap up? I'm not sure if I've necessarily asked this yet, but why did you choose to move from beautiful Tennessee to also beautiful Bay Area, which I have a particular fondness for? I spent a decent amount of time there. Why'd you choose to move to San Francisco?
Well, I'd put in 3 decades in Tennessee and
Yeah,
the
totally.
area, and I really love it. I mean, it's who I am and it's where I'm from, and who knows if I'll, go back there. It's where my family is. But I have been in the Bay Area in San Francisco for a large part of last year, just exploring it. I came here for a craft show that we tabled at and just really fell in love with it. And I'm ready to explore a new ecosystem, and I have a lot of community here, and it's kind of the seat of the natural products industry in the country. So it's been really energizing to meet people who work at, you know, I mean, like so many of my friends have come from traditional medicinals, and
Yeah.
there's just so many legacy companies who are based here that's very inspiring. And yeah, I just have never been anywhere this beautiful, and I love the people here.
Have you been to, I want to say it's Scarlet Sage Herb Shop? I
I
believe that's in
haven't.
San Francisco. Okay.
It is. I was living a few blocks from their old location. They
Oh,
moved right when I moved here,
oh,
and
right. That's right.
I did meet the owner. I believe her name's Laura, and she's
Yeah,
very
Laura Ash.
yeah,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Big fan.
Yeah, what a thriving herb scene, and yeah, like you said, natural food scene as well. Right on. Well, let's kind of wrap up a little bit here. What's next for you and what's next for Wooden Spoon Herbs?
Oh gosh, Wooden Spoon, we are launching 5 SKUs into all Whole Foods nationwide. And that's happening.
Whoa.
Yeah, so that's big, and that's very soon. So we're launching that in mid-March to early April. So it'll start rolling out into stores. And just my plea to all the herb heads out there, uh it's crucial that we get the support of our community. So if anyone's interested in trying our products and you live near Whole Foods, please feel free to pick up those there. We have 2 tinctures. We have Tranquility Tonic, which is for stress. I take it every day. We have Rose Colored Glasses, which is kind of like a
I
euphoric
like that.
mood booster.
That's a
And
great name.
our magnesium will be at Whole Foods, and then we have 2 capsules that are exclusive to Whole Foods. One is an adaptogen blend called Stress Savior, and then one is a nootropic blend called Brain Bloom, and those are both new and exclusive to Whole Foods. So that's what's been
Wow.
my focus. And then I'm working on a podcast for kind of
Really?
tangential to Wooden Spoon to come out later this year. We'll have to do a tradesy, and I'll have
That
you.
would be awesome. Yeah. So
Yeah.
is it going to be kind of another like say an herbalist podcast, or are you going to cover a lot of different subjects or
I think we're going to cover a lot of different subjects. I think we're
Nice.
going to cover, well, it'll all be in the world of plants, but for
Yeah.
example, I have a friend who runs a couple friends, and one of them runs a farm at a prison, on a prison campus, and they bring like young adults in to like work on the farm and learn about plants. So like that's a story I want
Mm,
to tell. I think it's more of like a storytelling thing of again people's like intersection with herbal medicine and like what that looks like. Because I've heard some really funny stories, and I want to like broaden the
love
definition of
that.
like, what herbalism is and how it looks.
What's it going to be called? Do you know yet?
Mhm.
No. Okay. Another thing to name.
Yep, yep,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm waiting for it
Well,
to
that's
come.
super exciting. How did you decide on which products you were going to sell at Whole Foods?
It was a blend of, well, basically they defined what category they wanted us to submit to, which was stress and mood, which is again like our
Gotcha.
best selling squeezer in that category. So we submitted what we had in that category, and then we added two exclusives for them
I like
um,
that.
because they like that.
Awesome. Amazing. Well, this has been really fun to get to know you, Lauren. Thanks for joining us on the Herbalist Hour.
It's been an honor. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Any closing thoughts or things you want to impart to the audience before we get out of here?
Oh man, thanks for listening, and yeah, happy herbing.
That's right. Be herb now. You
Be
will. Awesome. Thanks, y'all. We'll see you in the next episode of the Herbalist Hour. Thanks so much for watching today's episode of the Herbalist Hour. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. And if you want more great herbal content, be sure to subscribe to our Herbal YouTube channel. If you enjoy these Herbalist Hour episodes and you'd like to join us live, you can do so by becoming an Herbal Schoolhouse member. Learn more at herbal.com/schoolhouse. And if you want to get your first 30 days for free, use coupon code YouTube30 at checkout. So our Herbal Schoolhouse members get access to exclusive video classes, monographs, and a lot more herbal community discounts, along with joining these live Herbalist Hour interviews. So one more time, herbal.com/schoolhouse. Enter coupon code YouTube30 at checkout to get your first 30 days for free. All right, we'll see you in the next episode, and take care.